The village of Hollow Creek was a place untouched by time. Its cobblestone streets and thatched roof cottages seemed to belong to another era, a relic of a forgotten past. Nestled deep within a valley shrouded by ancient woods, life moved at the pace of the seasons. The dense forest, with its towering trees and thick underbrush, created a natural barrier, isolating the village from the outside world. Generations lived and died under the watchful gaze of the hills, their lives governed by faith and fear. The hills, with their rolling green slopes and hidden caves, held secrets that only the oldest villagers remembered. Fear of the old prophecy, whispered through the ages, of a child born under a blood moon. The full moon, casting an eerie glow through the trees, was a constant reminder of the prophecy that loomed over them. A child of power destined to be either savior or destroyer. This child, born under the blood moon, would possess abilities beyond comprehension, a force of nature that could alter the fate of Hollow Creek forever. The prophecy was more than legend in Hollow Creek. It was a living, breathing part of their existence, a shadow that followed them through their daily lives. It was woven into the fabric of their lives, a chilling lullaby sung to restless children. The old woman, with her wrinkled face and wise eyes, would gather the children around the fire and recount the tale, her voice trembling with the weight of the prophecy. The elders, keepers of the village's history, spoke of the prophecy with a tremor in their voice, their eyes reflecting centuries of fear and anticipation. They would gather in hushed circles, their conversations filled with worry and speculation about the signs and omens. They spoke of signs, of omens that would herald the coming of the child. Dark clouds gathering in the sky, a sudden chill in the air, or the eerie silence of the forest were all seen as harbingers of the prophecy's fulfillment. Life in Hollow Creek continued, a tapestry of daily rituals and age-old traditions. The villagers went about their work, tending to their fields, mending their homes and caring for their families, all the while keeping a wary eye on the horizon. But beneath the surface, a current of unease ran deep. Suspicious glances were exchanged, and whispered conversations filled the air as the villagers grappled with the uncertainty of their future. The elders' warnings echoed in the wind, casting long shadows over the villagers' hearts. The rustling of the leaves and the howling of the wind seemed to carry the voices of the past, reminding them of the prophecy's impending arrival. The prophecy was a spectre that haunted their waking hours, a nightmare that clung to their sleep. It was a constant presence, a dark cloud that overshadowed their every thought and action. They prayed for deliverance, yet secretly feared the day the prophecy would come to pass. In the quiet of the church, their whispered prayers mingled with their unspoken fears as they sought solace in their faith and hoped for a future free from the prophecy's grip. The night the moon bled was a night unlike any other. It was as if the heavens themselves had opened a wound, spilling their crimson essence across the sky. A hush fell over Hollow Creek, the usual nocturnal symphony silenced by an unspoken dread. The chirping of crickets, the hooting of owls, all fell silent as if nature itself was holding its breath. The air grew heavy, thick with anticipation. A dense fog rolled in, shrouding the village in a veil of mystery and fear. The villagers huddled in their homes, peering nervously through boarded windows as the sky turned a horrifying crimson red. Whispers of old legends and dark omens filled the air, adding to the palpable tension. The moon, a malevolent eye in the heavens, cast an eerie, blood-red glow over the trembling village. It was as if the moon itself was watching, waiting for something momentous to occur. In the heart of the village, a young woman named Elspeth went into labor. Her time had come, and the timing seemed almost too coincidental, too aligned with the celestial phenomenon. Her cries echoed through the eerie silence, each one a shard of pain in the oppressive night. The walls of her small home seemed to vibrate with the intensity of her suffering. The midwife, her face pale and drawn, tended to Elspeth with trembling hands, her heart heavy with a sense of foreboding. She had delivered many children, but tonight felt different, charged with an otherworldly energy. Outside, the wind howled like a banshee, a physical manifestation of the fear that gripped the village. Trees swayed violently, their branches clawing at the sky as if trying to escape the impending doom. As the blood moon reached its zenith, bathing the world in its crimson light, a child was born. The timing was uncanny, as if the universe had orchestrated this very moment. A boy, his cries strong and defiant, echoing oddly against the unnatural silence that had descended upon the village. His voice seemed to carry a weight, a significance that none could ignore. But something about the child was different. There was an unsettling aura around him, a sense that he was not just any ordinary newborn. His eyes, instead of the usual milky blue of a newborn, were open, aware. They seemed to pierce through the very fabric of reality, seeing things that no one else could. They shone with an unnatural intensity, a crimson glow that mirrored the ominous moon hanging in the sky. It was as if the essence of the blood moon had been transferred into this tiny being, marking him for a destiny unknown. The birth of the child under the blood moon sent shockwaves through Hollow Creek. Whispers, hushed and fearful, spread like wildfire. The prophecy had come to pass, but was the child a harbinger of salvation or ruin? The villagers were torn between hope and dread, their faith tested like never before. The days that followed the child's birth were plagued by strange occurrences. A flock of ravens, their beaks stained crimson, descended upon the village, their incessant cawing a morbid symphony that set teeth on edge. The old well, source of life for generations, ran dry, its depths echoing with an unnatural silence. Crops withered in the fields, their once vibrant colours bleached to a sickly grey. The omens were undeniable, the prophecy was unfolding, and fear was its faithful companion. The villagers, their faces etched with anxiety, whispered amongst themselves. Was the child a curse upon them? Was their faith not strong enough to ward off the evil that now seemed to permeate their lives? They looked to the elders for guidance, for reassurance. But even the elders, steeped in the wisdom of generations past, seemed lost, their faces etched with a fear they could no longer hide. The village, once united by faith and tradition, found itself fractured. The bonds that had held them together for generations were now strained, threatening to snap under the weight of fear and suspicion. Fear, a corrosive element, seeped into the hearts of the villagers, dividing them. It spread like wildfire, igniting distrust and paranoia, turning neighbour against neighbour. Some saw the child as an abomination, a bringer of misfortune, his very existence a threat to their way of life. They whispered tales of doom and disaster, convinced that the child was the harbinger of their downfall. They demanded the child be cast out, abandoned to the same fate that had befallen the village. Their voices grew louder, more insistent, as they sought to rid themselves of what they believed was the source of their suffering. Others, clinging to the hope that the prophecy spoke of salvation, saw the child as a beacon in the encroaching darkness. They believed that the child held the key to their redemption, a glimmer of light in their darkest hour. They argued for patience, for understanding. They pleaded with their fellow villagers to look beyond their fear and see the potential for salvation that the child represented. They believed the child was not a curse, but a test, a trial of their faith. They saw this as an opportunity to prove their devotion, to show that their belief could withstand even the greatest of challenges. They believed that in their darkest hour, the child would be their salvation, not their doom. They stood firm in their conviction, ready to defend the child against those who sought to cast him out. The debate raged on, fueled by fear and uncertainty. The village was torn apart, with each side growing more entrenched in their beliefs, unwilling to yield. The village elder, Old Man Hemlock, a man respected for his wisdom and compassion, found himself caught in the crossfire. His heart ached for his people, torn between the conflicting voices that surrounded him. He had spent his life studying the prophecy, deciphering its cryptic verses. He knew the ancient texts spoke of a child, but their meaning was shrouded in mystery, open to interpretation. He knew the weight of responsibility that rested on his shoulders, the fate of the village hanging in the balance. Every decision he made could tip the scales towards salvation or ruin. But even he, with all his wisdom, couldn't shake the feeling that a darkness had descended upon Hollow Creek, a darkness that threatened to consume them all. The air was thick with tension, and the once vibrant village now felt like a shadow of its former self. Hemlock knew that the path ahead was fraught with peril, and the choices they made in the coming days would determine their very survival.